What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected legends sits down for what should be a simple interview, only to face disrespect that crosses every line imaginable? It only took one comment about his family for Denzel Washington to stand up, walk off, and leave Jennifer Hudson speechless in front of millions of viewers. This was supposed to be easy. Denzel Washington, the man who has given us some of the greatest performances in cinema history, was making his rounds promoting his latest film. He had done countless interviews before this one. He knew how to handle himself in front of cameras. He knew how to charm an audience. He knew how to make everyone feel comfortable. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold on Jennifer Hudson's talk show. The stage was set like any other daytime talk show. Bright lights, a live studio audience, cameras positioned at every angle. Jennifer Hudson walked out to applause, smiling and waving, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than most people make in a month. She took her seat, crossed her legs, and waited for her guest to be introduced. When Denzel walked out, the audience erupted. People stood up, clapping and cheering for a man who had earned every bit of that respect through decades of incredible work. He waved humbly, shook Jennifer's hand, and sat down in the guest chair. The interview was about to begin. Jennifer started with the basics. She asked him about his new movie, about working with the director, about what drew him to the role. Denzel answered each question thoughtfully, the way he always did. He talked about the craft of acting, about finding truth in characters, about the responsibility of telling important stories. The audience hung on every word. This was why people loved him. He was real, he was humble, and he took his work seriously. But then something shifted. Jennifer leaned back in her chair and her tone changed. There was something different in her voice, something that felt less like curiosity and more like judgment. "You know, Denzel," she said, "I've been looking at your career, and I have to ask, don't you think you've been playing it safe lately? I mean, when was the last time you really took a risk?" The audience went quiet. Denzel paused for just a moment, his expression unchanged. He smiled politely and said, "I don't think of it as playing it safe. I think of it as choosing projects that mean something to me, that have something to say." Jennifer laughed, but it wasn't a warm laugh. It was the kind of laugh that felt dismissive, like she had already decided his answer wasn't good enough. "But come on," she pressed. "You keep doing these serious dramas, these heavy roles. Don't you ever just want to have fun? Do something light? Maybe show people you're not always so, intense?" Denzel's smile tightened just slightly. Anyone who knew him could see it. He was being patient, but she was testing that patience. "I do have fun," he said calmly. "I have fun bringing characters to life, telling stories that matter. That's what fulfills me." Jennifer waved her hand dismissively, as if his answer was boring her. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't how interviews were supposed to go. This wasn't how you treated a guest, especially not someone like Denzel Washington. But Jennifer kept going. She looked down at her cards, then back up at him with a smirk. "Let's talk about something else," she said. "You've been married for a long time. That's rare in Hollywood, right? What's the secret? Or is it just that, you guys keep things really private because there's stuff to hide?" The air in the studio changed instantly. Denzel's expression shifted. The polite smile disappeared. His jaw tightened. He stared at Jennifer for a long moment before speaking. "Excuse me?" he said, his voice low and controlled. Jennifer seemed to realize she had crossed a line, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. She laughed nervously and said, "I'm just saying, it's Hollywood. Everyone has secrets. I'm just curious if that's why you keep your family so out of the spotlight." The audience gasped. Some people looked at each other in shock. Others just stared at the stage, unable to believe what they were hearing. This was live television. Millions of people were watching this unfold in real time. Denzel took a deep breath. He leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped together, and when he spoke, his voice was calm but firm. "My family is private because I choose to keep them private," he said. "Not because I have anything to hide, but because I respect them. Because they didn't sign up for this life, I did, and I protect what matters to me." It was a perfect answer, dignified, clear, and respectful. He had shut down her inappropriate question without losing his composure. Most hosts would have apologized, moved on, changed the subject. But Jennifer Hudson was not most hosts. She leaned forward, matching his posture, and said something that no one saw coming. "Well, maybe if you weren't so secretive, people wouldn't wonder. I mean, your son got into some trouble a while back, right? Maybe if you were more open, people would understand that your family isn't as perfect as you pretend they are." The studio went dead silent. Not a single person moved. Not a single person breathed. Denzel stared at her. his eyes burning with something that went beyond anger. It was disbelief. It was hurt. It was the look of a man who had just been disrespected in the worst possible way. He stood up slowly, deliberately. He reached up and removed the microphone clipped to his jacket. He placed it carefully on the chair where he had been sitting, and then he looked at Jennifer Hudson with a level of intensity that made her shrink back in her seat. "You don't talk about my family," he said, his voice quiet but filled with power. "You don't talk about my children. You don't know them. You don't know me, and you clearly don't know how to respect your guests." Jennifer's face went pale. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. The audience sat frozen, watching a moment that would be replayed and talked about for years to come. Denzel turned to the audience and gave them a small nod, as if to say goodbye, as if to acknowledge that they weren't the problem here. Then he walked off the stage. His footsteps echoed in the silent studio. He didn't run. He didn't storm off in a rage. He simply left with his dignity intact, while Jennifer Hudson sat there looking like she had just made the biggest mistake of her career. The cameras kept rolling because no one knew what else to do. Jennifer tried to recover, tried to laugh it off, but her voice was shaking. She looked at the audience, at the cameras, and you could see the panic in her eyes. We'll take a quick break," she stammered, but it was too late. The damage was done. What led to this moment? How did a simple interview turn into one of the most shocking talk show disasters in recent memory? To understand that, you have to understand who these two people are and how this interview was doomed from the start. Denzel Washington has spent over 4 decades building a career based on excellence, integrity, and respect. He has won multiple Academy Awards. He has played heroes, villains, and everything in between. He has worked with the greatest directors in the world. And through it all, he has maintained a reputation as one of the classiest, most professional people in the entertainment industry. People who work with him talk about his work ethic, his kindness, his dedication to his craft. He doesn't get involved in drama. He doesn't chase fame. He does the work and he goes home to his family. That family is sacred to him. He has been married to his wife Pauletta for decades, a rarity in Hollywood. They have 4 children together, and Denzel has always been fiercely protective of them. He doesn't parade them in front of cameras. He doesn't use them for publicity. He has always believed that his job is to be in the spotlight so his family doesn't have to be. That's the choice he made, and it's a choice he has stood by no matter what. Jennifer Hudson, on the other hand, came into fame through a different path. She rose to prominence as a singer, then transitioned into acting, and eventually landed her own talk show. On paper, she had everything she needed to be successful. She was talented, she was charming, and she had a compelling personal story. But somewhere along the way, her show started to struggle. The ratings weren't where they needed to be. Critics said she wasn't connecting with audiences the way other hosts did. And there were whispers that she was trying too hard to create viral moments, to manufacture controversy that would get people talking. That's the context for what happened that day. Jennifer wasn't just doing an interview. She was trying to create a moment. She was trying to get headlines. She was trying to prove that her show was worth watching. And she thought she could do that by pushing buttons, by asking provocative questions, by treating her guests like a subject to be interrogated rather than a person to be respected. From the moment Denzel sat down, you could sense something was off. Jennifer's questions weren't coming from a place of genuine curiosity. They were coming from a place of ego, from a desire to appear edgy and unfiltered. She wanted to be the host who asked the tough questions, who didn't let celebrities hide behind their public personas. But there's a difference between asking tough questions and being disrespectful. There's a difference between being bold and being cruel. When she questioned his career choices, implying that he was playing it safe, she was dismissing decades of thoughtful work. She was reducing his entire legacy to a soundbite that fit her narrative. Denzel has never been someone who chases trends or does things for approval. He has always followed his own compass, choosing roles that challenge him and stories that matter. To suggest that he was somehow afraid or uninspired was not just wrong, it was insulting. But he handled it with grace. He answered her honestly, without getting defensive. He gave her the benefit of the doubt. He tried to keep the conversation respectful, even as she was clearly trying to provoke him. Then she went after his marriage. That was the first major line she crossed. Marriage is personal. Family is personal. And when you're interviewing someone, especially someone who has always kept their private life private, you don't go there unless they open that door themselves. Denzel never opened that door. He never invited that kind of scrutiny. But Jennifer pushed anyway, insinuating that his privacy was suspicious, that he must be hiding something. That's when you could see Denzel's patience starting to wear thin. His body language changed. His tone changed. He was still polite, still controlled, but there was a warning in his voice. He was drawing a boundary, making it clear that she was stepping into territory that was off limits. And then she crossed the final line. She brought up his son. She brought up a difficult moment in his family's life and threw it in his face on national television. She weaponized his child to try to score points, to try to get a reaction, to try to create her viral moment. That was it. That was the moment everything fell apart. Because Denzel Washington is a lot of things, but he is first and foremost a father. And no amount of professionalism, no amount of media training, no amount of experience was going to make him sit there and allow someone to disrespect his children. When he stood up and removed that microphone, he wasn't just walking away from an interview, he was making a statement. He was showing millions of people that there are some things more important than playing nice for the cameras. There are some lines you don't cross. There are some things you don't tolerate, no matter who you are or where you are. His words were measured but powerful. He didn't yell. He didn't insult her back. He simply stated the truth. She had crossed a line. She had disrespected him and his family, and he was not going to participate in that anymore. The way he addressed the audience before he left showed who he really was. He didn't blame them. He didn't make a scene. He acknowledged them with respect and dignity, even in the midst of his own anger and hurt. That small gesture spoke volumes about his character. Jennifer Hudson's reaction told a different story. She sat there, frozen, unable to process what had just happened. She had wanted to create a memorable moment, and she had succeeded, but not in the way she intended. Instead of looking bold and fearless, she looked reckless and cruel. Instead of getting a viral clip that would boost her show, she got a viral clip that would define her as the host who disrespected Denzel Washington so badly that he walked off her stage. The audience didn't know what to do. They had come to see a fun interview with a beloved actor. Instead, they witnessed a masterclass in boundaries and self-respect. They saw what happens when someone mistakes controversy for content, when someone confuses shock value with substance. After Denzel left, Jennifer tried to continue the show, but it was impossible. How do you recover from something like that? How do you move forward when you've just been called out on live television for being disrespectful? She fumbled through her next words, trying to make light of the situation, but her voice betrayed her. She knew she had messed up. She knew this was going to follow her forever. The production team scrambled behind the scenes. They cut to commercial, trying to figure out what to do next. But there was no fixing this. The damage was done. The moment was captured. And everyone watching knew exactly what they had just seen. What makes this moment so powerful is the contrast between these two people. On one side, you have Denzel Washington, a man who has earned respect through decades of hard work, integrity, and humility. A man who values his craft and his family above all else. A man who has never needed to create drama because his talent speaks for itself. A man who understands that real strength isn't about dominating others. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to compromise it. On the other side, you have Jennifer Hudson, someone who was given a platform and squandered it by trying to tear down someone better than her. Someone who thought she could build herself up by making her guest uncomfortable. Someone who confused being provocative with being interesting. Someone who learned the hard way that disrespect has consequences. The interview had started with such promise. The audience was excited. Denzel was gracious. It could have been a great conversation about art, about life, about the things that matter. Instead, it became a cautionary tale about what happens when ego overtakes empathy, when ambition overtakes respect. Every question Jennifer asked after that first misstep dug the hole deeper. She could have corrected course. She could have apologized. She could have recognized that she was losing her guest and changed direction. But she didn't. She kept pushing, kept probing, kept trying to find a weak spot. She treated the interview like a battle she needed to win rather than a conversation she needed to facilitate. Denzel gave her multiple chances to stop. His answers were patient. His demeanor was calm. He was giving her every opportunity to back down, to move on, to do her job properly. But she mistook his patience for weakness. She thought she could keep pushing because he was too professional to react. She was wrong. The moment he stood up, everything changed. In that instant, he reclaimed his power. He reminded everyone watching that respect is not negotiable. He showed that walking away is sometimes the strongest thing you can do. He proved that protecting what matters most is worth more than any interview, any appearance, any moment of fame. His exit was not dramatic in the way Jennifer had been trying to create drama. It was dramatic because it was real, because it was a genuine human reaction to being treated poorly. because it was a line being drawn in the sand by someone who had every right to draw it. The silence he left behind was deafening. The audience sat there, unsure whether to applaud or remain quiet. The cameras kept rolling, capturing Jennifer's face as she realized what she had done. The crew behind the scenes scrambled, knowing they had just witnessed something unprecedented. This wasn't a planned stunt. This wasn't a publicity trick. This was a real moment of conflict, of disrespect, being met with dignity, of someone saying enough is enough. Jennifer tried to fill the silence with words, but what could she say? How do you explain away what everyone just witnessed? How do you justify questions that were so clearly out of line? She couldn't. So she stammered through some half-hearted comments and called for a commercial break, hoping that somehow the show could continue, that somehow this could be forgotten. But it wouldn't be forgotten. This was the kind of moment that defines careers. For Denzel, it reinforced everything people already knew about him, that he is principled, that he is strong, that he knows his worth. For Jennifer, it exposed something people had maybe suspected but hadn't seen so clearly, that she was willing to sacrifice decency for ratings, that she didn't understand the responsibility that comes with her platform. The beauty of Denzel's response was in its simplicity. He didn't need to make a grand speech. He didn't need to embarrass her further. He simply stated the facts, removed himself from the situation, and left. That restraint, that control, that dignity in the face of disrespect, that's what made the moment so powerful. He could have yelled. He could have insulted her. He could have given her the explosive confrontation she seemed to be baiting him for. But he didn't, because that's not who he is. He doesn't need to prove himself by tearing others down. He doesn't need to win arguments or score points. He just needs to maintain his integrity and protect what matters to him. That's the lesson in all of this. That's what people will remember long after the shock of the moment fades. Not the drama itself, but the way Denzel handled it. The way he showed that you can be strong without being aggressive, that you can stand up for yourself without stooping to someone else's level, that you can walk away with your head held high. Jennifer wanted a memorable interview. She got one, but not the kind that would help her career, not the kind that would earn her respect. She got the kind that would serve as a warning to every other host, every other interviewer, every other person with a platform. Treat your guests with respect. Honor the trust they place in you by sitting in that chair. Understand that controversy for controversy's sake is not worth it if it costs you your integrity. The questions she asked weren't tough or brave. They were invasive and mean-spirited. There's a difference between holding someone accountable and attacking them personally. There's a difference between asking difficult questions and being deliberately hurtful. Jennifer crossed from one to the other, and she paid the price for it. Denzel's walk-off wasn't about being thin-skinned or unable to handle criticism. It was about knowing where the line is and refusing to let someone cross it. It was about understanding that some things, like family, are sacred. It was about demonstrating through action, not just words, what his values are. The audience watched all of this unfold with a mixture of shock and admiration. Shock at Jennifer's questions and admiration for Denzel's response. They had come expecting entertainment, and they got something more profound. They got a real-life example of character, of boundaries, of self-respect. When Denzel walked off that stage, he wasn't running away. He was walking towards something more important, his dignity, his family, his peace of mind. He was showing that no platform, no matter how big, is worth compromising those things. Jennifer sat there in the aftermath, probably replaying the last few minutes in her head, probably wishing she could take it all back. But you can't take back words once they're spoken, especially not on live television in front of millions of people. The interview was over, but the impact of what happened would last much longer. This was supposed to be a simple promotional interview. Denzel was supposed to talk about his movie, share some insights, maybe tell a funny story or two. Instead, it became a moment that revealed the true character of both people involved, one who values respect and family above all else, and one who was willing to sacrifice both for a moment of attention. The cameras captured every second of it. The moment Jennifer's questions crossed the line, the moment Denzel's expression changed, the moment he stood up, the moment he spoke his truth, the moment he walked away. All of it preserved forever, a reminder of what happens when disrespect meets dignity. This is the story of an interview that went horribly wrong, not because of technical difficulties or awkward moments, but because one person forgot the basic principle of human decency. Because one person thought they could push boundaries that should never be pushed. Because one person learned too late that respect is not optional, it's essential. Denzel Washington walked off that stage with his integrity intact.